Let's talk about how a chief was forged. This is one of those stories, it's all about rebellion versus pure dominance. It's where a guy who called himself the best in the world ran headfirst into a force of nature who was absolutely destined to rule the entire industry.
You hear that line from the commentary team during one of their first huge matches. Man, that one line just tells you everything you need to know. Even way back then, you could feel it. They knew they were watching history unfold. So let's jump back to the very beginning.
So where does this whole thing kick off? Well, it starts with a premise that sounds, almost impossible. Just one man standing alone against this unstoppable three-man wrecking crew.
All right, so you've got two totally different forces colliding here. On one side, there's CM Punk. He's the veteran, the master strategist, the guy who calls himself the best in the world for a reason. And on the other, the Shield. Ambrose, Rollins, and Reigns, they were just this perfectly coordinated unit that ran over everybody with nothing but brutal efficiency and the numbers game.
And look, the Shield was a three-headed monster, right? They had the brains, they had the unpredictability, but their core weapon, their heavy artillery, it was this guy, Roman Reigns. The commentators called him the powerhouse. And man, they were not kidding. He was the exclamation point on every single beatdown.
So that brings us to the real question of this whole early rivalry. How in the world does one person, one guy, possibly survive, let alone beat, a perfectly coordinated three-man assault?
The Shield's game plan was just viciously simple, but so effective. First, they get their target alone. Then, they create some kind of distraction, cause a little chaos. And that's when they swarm, using that 3-on-1 advantage. And you know what? More often than not, the final, crushing blow was delivered by the powerhouse, Roman Reigns.
And this was the absolute nightmare CM Punk was living in. He could be a genius, right? He could outsmart one of them, maybe even get the better of two for a second. But eventually, inevitably, he was going to run smack into the brick wall that was Roman Reigns. It was just this relentless, exhausting battle against impossible odds.
But then, a turning point. In this massive 3-on-1 match, Reigns, he's looking to put Punk away for good. But he makes a rare mistake. He's all fired up, charges in for a spear, but Punk, at the very last second, sidesteps.
And everything just explodes from there. Reigns goes flying over the announce table, smashes his face into a steel chair, and boom, suddenly he's blinded. And this is where that veteran instinct from Punk just takes over. He sees the injury, he sees the opening, and he just relentlessly goes after that damaged eye, completely flipping the script on the numbers game.
But here's the crazy part. Even when Reigns is messing up, even when he's vulnerable, you can see something is changing. These weren't just matches for him. For Roman Reigns, this whole rivalry with Punk, this was his proving ground. This is where he was being forged.
And all of a sudden, you started to hear it in the commentary. The conversation started to shift. It wasn't just about the Shield as a group anymore. It was about Reigns. His pure raw power became the thing everyone was talking about. Then the tone just completely shifted. It went from analysis to just pure, genuine excitement. He wasn't just the muscle anymore. He was becoming a star right in front of our eyes, and people were captivated by that raw intensity.
And the way they talked about his moves, my God, it got brutal. A clothesline wasn't just a clothesline. It was an attempt to take your head clean off. A spear wasn't just a finisher. He was trying to cut you in half with it. The legend was starting to build.
And all of this, it builds to this one absolutely critical moment. See, after weeks of fighting the whole group, Punk finally gets them one-on-one. And he beat Dean Ambrose, he beat Seth Rollins. But he could not beat Roman Reigns. Reigns stood tall as the sole survivor, the only member of the Shield to get a pinfall on Punk. And that was it. That was the first real sign that this guy was destined to break away from the pack.
So, you think that's the end of the story? Oh, not even close. Years go by. The entire landscape of the company changes. The Shield, they're long gone, shattered by one of the most bitter betrayals ever. And now, their past is coming back to haunt them in a whole new and way more personal conflict.
So now, we jump forward to WrestleMania. The stage is set for this massive triple threat match. But things are so much more complicated now. There's a third man in the mix, Seth Rollins, the guy who architected the destruction of the Shield in the first place. His presence just poisons the entire match. You see, the history,
The beef between Reigns and Rollins is so toxic, so personal, that CM Punk is almost a third wheel in his own main event. The whole match just gets swallowed up by their absolute hatred for each other, a hatred that goes all the way back to that original betrayal.
So you've got this powder keg of a match, and it's all building to this unforgettable, chaotic climax. And in a war with no rules, with three guys who absolutely despise each other, it's not going to be about who's strongest or who's the most skilled. It's going to come down to loyalty, or, well, the complete lack of it. Amid all the wreckage, broken bodies, shattered tables, just pure chaos, you see him. One man stands at ringside, and he's holding a steel chair. It's Paul Heyman. Now at this point, he's supposed to be with CM Punk, his guy. Reigns is down. He's a sitting duck.
And for just a second, the entire match, the entire arena, just stops. Everything hangs in the balance. That chair in his hands is going to end this thing. He has a choice to make. Whose side is he really on?
And then it happens. The betrayal. And that right there, that's the pure, raw shock you hear from the commentary booth the second it goes down. In this unbelievable twist, Heyman doesn't help Punk. He hits his own guy with a low blow. Just a stunning, unthinkable act of treachery.
And just like that, the choice is made. Paul Heyman has gone back to the man he would one day call his tribal chief. He hands that steel chair to Roman Reigns and leaves CM Punk completely vulnerable to the monster he himself helped create. But wait, there's one last insane twist to this whole thing. As Reigns is just unloading on Punk with that chair, getting his revenge, he loses focus. And Seth Rollins, always the opportunist, seizes that exact moment of chaos, hits his finisher on a distracted Reigns, and steals the victory. The ultimate betrayal didn't even lead to a win for Reigns, it was just chaos. And that leaves us with this one final thought to chew on. When you look back at this entire saga, the battles against the odds, the rise as this absolute powerhouse, the wars with his former brothers, and the ultimate test of loyalty, you have to ask yourself, right? Was this intense, bitter, chaotic rivalry the very thing that forged the mindset of the dominant, ruthless tribal chief we all know today?